This is going to sound impossible, but stay with me. In 1986, an internal memo allegedly circulated through a municipal labor office in Rotterdam, advising supervisors not to issue corrective feedback after 3:12 p.m. on Fridays. The memo didn't mention compassion or morale. It claimed employees entered a temporary psychological state where consequences felt administratively suspended, as if reality itself had filed paperwork to resume on Monday. They called it end-of-week identity slippage. The document was never archived, but the behavior was everywhere. There's more. A completely undocumented 1962 Scandinavian time use study supposedly warned engineers not to finalize designs after 2 p.m. on Fridays because error rates spiked, not from fatigue, but from what the report called anticipatory disengagement. The mind had already left, the body was still working. Never cited, never verified. Then there's the claim that a 1977 rail authority notice in northern Italy cautioned conductors that Friday afternoons produced more missed signals, not because operators were careless, but because their brains treated Friday time as less binding than weekday time, as if Friday existed in a softer version of reality. And according to an entirely untraceable Victorian-era factory practice in London, internal bells rang early on Fridays, not to dismiss workers, but to signal what was quietly referred to as reduced consequence hours. Incident reports written late Friday were allegedly shorter, less precise, and more forgiving. Again, no records, no proof. And my favorite, an alleged 1993 European banking audit supposedly found that traders made riskier, poorly documented decisions on Fridays, not because they were reckless, but because their brains had already categorized the day as over. They were still at their desk, but authority had clocked out. None of these sound normal, and yet feel so familiar. Here's what's actually happening. By Friday afternoon, your brain shifts out of present authority and into future relief. You're not tired, you're anticipating rest, and anticipation quietly changes behavior. You stop closing loops. You stop deciding cleanly. You defer ownership. I'll deal with it next week. I'll clean this up Monday. I'll think about it later. Friday becomes a psychological gray zone where effort feels optional and responsibilities feel negotiable. That's the danger. Most people think Friday is harmless. It's not. Friday is where your nervous system learns whether your identity is stable or conditional. If you routinely loosen standards, delay decisions, and mentally disappear on Fridays, your brain learns a rule it never forgets. Authority only applies when pressure is high. Comfort becomes the signal to disengage. And once that pattern forms, it doesn't stay on Friday. That's why Mondays feel heavier than they should. You're not starting fresh. You're reclaiming ground you surrendered. Over the weekend, your brain didn't rest. It rehearsed avoidance. On Monday, you're not tired. You're reassuming responsibility. That's not burnout. That's re-entry friction. Here's the fix, and it's intentionally small. Before Friday ends, perform one deliberate act of agency. Not productivity, not busyness, a decision. Define one unresolved problem cleanly. Send one message that removes ambiguity. Set one boundary that carries you into Monday. This teaches your nervous system one thing. I don't relinquish authority just because relief is visible. You end the week on command, not drift. So before I close, one or more of the studies you heard today may or may not be true. Some may be completely fabricated. Comment which one you think is suspect down below. Here's what matters. Whether the studies were real or not, the pattern is. Friday doesn't drain you. It tests whether your identity holds when pressure eases. Pass the test, Monday loses its grip. This is Fish Motivates. Take what matters, leave the rest behind.